When you think about some of the best tier 7 tank destroyers, you're probably looking at things like the E25, things like the Super Hellcat, and things like the T28 HTC, etc, J Panther, some of the SU-122 and ISUs, etc, with the big alpha damage, but very rarely will you see the Javelin Kruppstair Waffenträger in here, and today's video is actually going to showcase this tank and how it can still be decent within the game, even if it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. And I guess first, well, let's have a look at the tank in detail. So what's special about the tier 7 Borsig? Well, it's mainly down to the fact that it has unbelievable camo. As you can see in the way that we've built this tank, we've essentially got ridiculous still concealment, which is essentially how easy it is to get spotted. 194 meters is how close they'll have to be if they have maximum view range, so really hard to detect this thing. And of course it also has 461 meters view range, which means you have double the detection range, in fact over double the detection range that you would be spotted in. So it is very good at being able to stay hidden, and often, most of the time, when you fire this tank and you do get spotted, it's because you already know that that was going to happen, and therefore you may not have wanted to fire in the first place. But either way, what else does this tank have? Well, unlike the Borsig at tier 8, this tier 7 has 240 alpha, so this is the main difference between this and something like the Borsig, the Iron Rain, and some of the other premiums at this tier. So 240 alpha, but does it get the damage per minute to be able to deal that damage quite consistently? And yes, 2,904 damage per minute makes this tank very nice, and you can certainly dish out quite a bit of damage. Combine that with the fact that the accuracy is very good, the camo is amazing. Yeah, it can be a good tank. I'm not going to say it's overpowered. This thing is not overpowered, but I guess let's actually see what the tank is like in game. So it's time for the stealthy boy, the Javelin. And of course, you've seen what the stats are like, you've seen what the tank can do statistically, but does it actually match up in game? And that is the real question that I had when I first looked at this vehicle, because I thought, like, this tank doesn't really have anything exceptional. I mean, it does have very good camo, granted, but there are other tanks that have similar levels of camo. I mean, you can get the Super Hellcat down pretty well. It's a lot faster. I mean, it's literally double the speed. It has the same alpha. So can you really make a tank that goes maximum of 35 kilometers an hour still be able to remain undetected in matches where maybe the enemy team kind of YOLO? I guess that's what I was trying to find out. And of course, it was an interesting one for me to do, because we very rarely pick some of these weird vehicles, some of the more novel and unique vehicles in World of Tanks. So I always like to do it, I always like to play them, and it's always nice to actually showcase some of these that maybe aren't just the meta broken vehicles all of the time. So the Javelin is definitely not a meta vehicle. I can tell you that straight away after playing it for a few games. I mean, I've played quite a few in the past, and of course in this recent stint of games we played quite a lot, but the Javelin is one of the tanks that I enjoy playing, and it's because of the low alpha damage but high rate of fire that I always enjoy playing with these sorts of tanks. And that allows you to not only get damage but also assistance damage. Now, we're not able currently to be able to get any damage because of course we don't have the penetration with the standard rounds, 2 pen and atomic in the turret, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Now we try and get around on the Vanguard, which doesn't actually end up happening, and instead we'll have to go for the atomic. Now the atomic also not able to pen, so far going not particularly too great. But what has happened is we've been able to fire at a atomic, we've been able to fire at a Vanguard at small distances and not get spotted. Now we are using the bushes, which is always something you should do within World of Tanks to avoid taking any excess damage, and of course avoid actually getting spotted in the first place, since avoiding getting spotted in the first place is the best way to not get hit, and therefore you should always be doing that. Now the enemy Vanguard does indeed come up, and he does actually spot us this time. That's because he was well within this circle that we have. But we do punish him twice for the amount of times he hits us, and we go for this atomic. I'm not sure where we're able to hit him, but unfortunately he does manage to hit us back in return, and having dealt, what, 850 damage for only 240 damage in return, not a bad trade at all. And you can see here, flicking onto the Sentinel, you can definitely flick with this tank since the accuracy and dispersion are good. Dispersion being, you know, when you turn a turret, how big does the tank bloom? And it's not that big, especially if you do remain still and you're actually only turning the turret. It's very, very good, and that's of course the best way to still stay hidden as well, because you're not moving and you get the camo bonus from staying still. And of course that's the point in having a turret, so you don't actually get spotted as often like you would have to when you're moving in something like a T28 HTC. So having done 1800 damage, the damage just keeps on racking in when you play a tank like this. That's why you're able to deal damage to things like the IKV, which is a tank that in all regards is actually pretty decent. I kind of enjoyed playing that little rat tank, but you know, the Javelin still asserting its dominance over the non-turreted TDs, and I really do enjoy playing this tank because it gives you something different. You don't always have to play the Borsigs, you don't always have to play the high alpha. Sometimes having the low alpha will actually help you learn to play the game a little bit more than you would see with some of the other vehicles. And you can see here, instead of just going for the shell, I actually pull back behind the bush so we don't get spotted. Of course, being on this huge hill, it's never a good idea, even if all of the enemy team tanks are actually spotted over on the other side. We still don't want to get spotted. You never know, RT could swing their little ratty barrel over, and when you don't have any armour, like the Javelin or the Kruppstair Waffenträger, whatever you want to call it, yeah, you're going to take a big old hit and probably be sent back to the garage, especially considering the alpha of some of the artilleries. Now then, one thing that I always enjoy about having the lower alpha is the ability to track opponents, and you're seeing that here, 3,200 damage, and we're going for the shells on the enemy Tiger P. Now what I do here is actually load a HE round. HE does more damage against buildings, etc. So you can knock down a whole building wherever you hit. If it is like segmented into like two parts, for example, like you saw there with the house, you could damage, well, you could take down the whole bit of the building in 2 shots, whereas it would have taken 4 shots if I had standard rounds. So it's something you can utilise in your own games if you're interested. But of course it allows us to not only break down the cover of the Tiger P, but then allows us to spot him since he's no longer got any cover to hide behind. But we do 3,400 damage in this game, pick up 3 enemies as well, and of course get a minute amount of assistance really for this vehicle, but still a very good game, and it was an interesting one to play. But let's jump into another one as well and continue. The next map then is Karelia. This map is one of the ones that, I don't know, I find it a little bit boring to play sometimes. It's very, very linear. Most games happen exactly as this one, whereby one team wins the hill area in G6 and 7, and then the other team kind of just slowly get dwindled down. And I guess that's what you would expect from most maps. Most maps are fairly linear. They usually have 3 corridors. But that's where you can take advantage with this tank by remaining hidden on one of those corridors and basically just punishing any tank that progresses through the corridor. But of course what we're going to do is move over to the typical tank destroyer location that you'll see with this vehicle over directly where that tank destroyer was right there. But you will see it in a second. I mean, a lot of people go here. It's an easy way to get early damage at the beginning of the game and allows you to deal damage for free essentially. And that's exactly what you want in a tier 8 game. This tank can basically take 2 hits from some tier 8 heavies, so you don't want to be getting hit very often, you don't want to be getting spotted, etc. And of course when you're coming up against tier 6s, you want to capitalise as much as possible, because you probably won't be able to capitalise against the higher tier vehicles. Remember, when you are playing this vehicle, you do have the ability to actually blind fire people, and you can see here we've been able to actually pick up some assistance from blind firing. So, you know, when you've got this little reload, you may as well go for blind fires. There's very little reason why you wouldn't go for it. And of course, with the accuracy, etc., you can usually pinpoint quite accurately where you want to be hitting. And so far, you know, we've been able to pretty much stop the opponent's advances at this point. We've taken out the Pantera. We've also dealt quite a bit of damage over on the corner tanks that are sat over there. But at this point I'm thinking, you know what, it's enough time of sitting at the back, and it's now time to push in, and hopefully we can do some damage on the people on the hill, since the hill is very crucial, and if we don't take it early we are going to end up in a very bad spot, and I don't want to be in the case where we literally have 1 or 2 squares where all of our vehicles are, as you'll get sausage sandwiched, and we all know what a sausage sandwich is like in World of Tanks. It's not nice to be on the receiving end. Should probably make a t-shirt with that, to be honest. But either way, what we've got is 1200 damage, and I find this tank is very annoying for the most part, is that you have to kind of hope that the game gives you the game to be able to get enough damage with this tank, because there's so many opportunities where you feel like you want to push but you can't push because you don't have armor. You're not fast, which means that you kind of sacrifice the whole armor. You're not fast, and yeah, you get really good camo, but you don't have exceptional kind of camo to the point where you're invisible and it's going to be like a game breaking, etc. Like, I mean, it is very, very good, and if you use it correctly, it is very good, or game breaking, I guess you could call it. But I mean, it's not going to give you insane amounts of damage just from your camo. And although the damage per minute of the vehicle is also very good, yet again, I mean, it's not exceptional to the point where it's unbelievably better than any other vehicle in the game. So it leaves you kind of thinking, well, why am I playing this vehicle really? And I guess that the only real answer that probably most people can give is that it's a tank that's interesting, it's novel, and that, you know, it's something else. You don't always have to play those broken tanks like we've been saying throughout the entirety of this video. I hope I'm not droning on too much, but it really is a tank that I feel like more people should give a go, and if you can see it in the game, or if you have an opportunity to pick this one up for free at some point later on down the line, then maybe it's worth it. In terms of buying it for a competitive tank, I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, if you really enjoy the Borsig, you really enjoy tanks with higher alpha or lower alpha damage but more rate of fire, then this tank is probably for you. And yeah, I certainly enjoyed playing it, and it was one of the tanks that I feel like you can do very well in if you know how to use the camo, and if you know how to use low alpha damage guns, things like the Comet. You know, it translates very much from those vehicles over to this one, and that's something I always enjoyed playing. So yeah, it was a very easy transition for me to play this tank as opposed to something with super high alpha. If you're playing some of the high alpha TDs like the SU-152 and stuff like that, you'll probably have a lot worse of a time, but yeah, not for me. Either way, you're seeing here just sitting down in the area over here just trying to spot, and of course we don't want to lose to cap, because you know what it's like when you lose to cap. No one wants to do it. But in this case we're just trying to find a shell on the Tiger, and we do manage to do it, but our team are indeed just capping more and more, and we make a terribly aimed shot there, so we don't get any more damage, and we are limited to just 2,900. Not a bad game considering we only have 800 hit points, but yeah, it could have been a better game if we didn't cap, but you know, it is what it is. And we still have a very good result either way, and hopefully that showcased a very strange vehicle, and one that I hope you guys actually don't take for granted when you see it in game, but definitely remember to fire HE at it, because it doesn't have any armour. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you join me back in another video. Don't forget the gameplay and tank reviews playlist on screen right now for more gameplay, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.